Hey all, Scott here from Art of the Genre, and today I was just going to go over a little bit more of Middle-earth and what I do when I'm campaigning in it, because I promised a video about my current campaigns. My current campaigns takes place in an area of Middle-earth called the Rhudaur. And if you can see from that map, it actually lies west of the Misty Mountains in the lands just north of Rivendell, and also a little bit to the east of where you would find Bree and also the Shire. So you can keep that in mind. It's a nice little area. It was tucked in. It's just south of Angmar, where the Witch King is from, and it gives you a really good instillment of place to kind of create your own storyline without getting into anything that is too hardcore in the books. What's going on just over the Misty Mountains, of course, would be Mirkwood, and then you go, the Lonely Mountain and that kind of stuff you're going to get into there. So this particular area to me is a nice place where you can customize. As I've said before in a previous video, I run this with the Savage Worlds edition of Middle-earth, which is actually free for you on the Trove. And a lot of what I'll be showing you here is also available for free on the Trove if you want to look for it there. Although not everything in there, and probably one of the most important is Dark Mage of the Rhudaur, which I use a lot of information from, but I could not find it on there. But anyway, that's where I've set my campaign. Have a lot of fun there. There's a lot of great things to do and a lot of storylines to get involved with. All my source material that I use for my campaigns are always something that I've taken out of the Middle-earth role-playing game, MERP, because they have such great kind of gazetteer things that will tell you a lot about certain areas. So I always try to incorporate their work into it. And I'm going to go through the supplements that I'm currently using on this campaign in the area. First and foremost, I started the campaign in the mini adventure that you can actually find in the Middle-earth role-playing game core book. This is the reprinting of it, and it starts at the Inn of the Last Bridge. Kind of a strange place to start it out, just because I don't know why the Inn of the Last Bridge is really there. It's almost right in the middle between Bree and Rivendell, going east-west, along a road that I'm not sure why anyone would be going to Rivendell or from Rivendell to Bree. I suppose elves could, but otherwise shouldn't be a lot of traffic there. But nevertheless, that's kind of the trail that the dwarves would have taken in The Hobbit to get to the Misty Mountains. So it's got a lot of history there. Just down south of that, if you follow the river, you get you get into the lands where you have the large city of Tharbad. So I've actually just say that Tharbad does trading to the north and comes up the rivers there and hits that last bridge. So that gives you a little more access to things that are happening in the south. Tharbad, that's another city, a big metropolitan area that you can utilize. So that's where I've started it out. And then the Rhudaur comes out in an area called the Triangle, which is between two rivers, in the Fellwood, which is within it, which is another dark wood, but it doesn't have spiders in it or anything, but you can use a lot of fun stuff within there, and that's detailed within these other adventures. So other things that I'm using, just so you know, Dark Mage of the Rhudaur, this is my go-to because it has a lot of information that I think was released later, and it just gives you more of an adventure feel versus Gazetteers, which you get a lot in the first ones. And it also deals with these, the Watchtower, the Dunedain Watchtowers of the Rhudaur, which were actually all destroyed in the early Third Age. I play the late Third Age, where you're getting ready to go into Lord of the Rings. I play between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, actually 8 years before the Lord of the Rings takes place, and 8 years after Bilbo leaves the Shire, so in that 16-year window. So what I've really done, when you work with Middle-earth, you have to be able to customize their timelines, because everything that they do within them comes with, you can play in the Second Age here, you can play in the Third Age here, you can play when this happened or that happened or this happened. Great. But if you're really customizing toward what people know, which are the book eras, unless you're very well versed, I suggest you just take pieces out of this, rewrite it. So what I've done is this particular tower, which is the focus of this particular adventure. I've just said the Dunedain, the Rangers of the North, rebuilt it. It's the only one left, and then just retold the story here and what's happening in that particular age with the Witch King of Angmar, who's getting ready to, of course, come south and eventually attack Minas Tirith. So that's one. That's the primary, the Dark Mage. Second one, most important to me, is Hillman of the Trollshaws. This details two things for me: the small town of Tamithbryn, and the larger tower and dungeon complex of Camithbryn, which you can use also within this as another location for adventures and dungeon delving, just as you do here in the Dark Mage of the Rhudaur. And it does give you as well access to two really cool things. As I've talked in a previous video, there aren't a lot of things to fight that are applicable for characters within Middle-earth. Because all you've got, again, I'll go through it quickly, you've got orcs, trolls, goblins, but they can be supplemented with orcs as well. It's hard to tell which is which. And then you look at beasts, wargs, and stuff like that. But otherwise, there's not a lot of enemies to fight, other than wild men, hillmen, and so forth and so on. So this gives you a good ability to supplement with that with something cool, as does Dark Mage. I'll get into that in a little bit, but I'll tell you what these things actually bring into your campaign. Then as the overall threat, I use Angmar, this Angmar supplement, the Witch King of Angmar, because it details the fortress of Mordecai. And also it talks to you about several of the commanders. The one I use most is Ulrich. And you can see some cool pictures of some of the commanders there as well. But I use them as a threat. They're moving down into this area. They're sending their orcs. And I can take a lot of access through this book with cool warg riders and stuff like that, that they give you a lot of commanders and stuff that you can send down into the area and have, give them livery. I use, for the Mordecai orcs, I use a red painted scimitar over a black skull. And those, so when my players see them, they know that, oh crap, we're dealing with Mordecai dwarves or Mordecai orcs in raiding parties, and they don't like those. And then last but not least, this is probably the least thing I use, but it does give you good access, is Rangers of the North. This will give you more pieces of that particular area in the Northern Kingdoms, and also some cool input if you're wanting to use kind of a ranger network or anything like that. It gives you a lot of lineages. And it gives you a few, there's a couple things in here, like little troll layers and stuff like that. But I don't like to just keep throwing troll layers at people because, you know, that tends to wane a little bit. But anyway, those are the supplements that I use when I'm running this particular campaign. They give you a massive amount of information that you can then customize. But again, I run in two particular areas. The Fellwood, which right in the center of it is where I put the guard tower, the Dunedain tower, the watchtower of the Rhudaur, and then also Camithbryn, which is from Hillman. And one of the things that the Dark Mage module gets into are things called blood whites. Blood whites are actually, if you're just going to facilitate them, they're going to be more like a vampire. But I use them as kind of a more wraithish threat, kind of like what you might find in one of the Nazgul or something like that. I have these particular things haunt people's dreams. And there are two that I use in particular. Skycrelian the Swan, which is female, and she has these huge white swan wings and appears to you in dreams as swans and stuff like that. She can kind of torment the male characters. And then if you have female characters, there's Narentur the Raven. He has these black wings. He's beautiful. And he can come in and you see ravens. I have people in the tower sketching ravens and stuff like that because they're getting haunted in their dreams. And eventually these two will press evil against you, making you make spirit rolls, making you make things until you finally fall into their sway, which is going to be one of the things that the characters will run into here. So they're kind of your two main, I guess, epic bad guys that are in this. I have one, The Raven is actually within the Fellwood, and then the Swan is actually in Cameth Bryn. So they're both kind of manipulating these two areas in the service of the Witch King, even though they do not want to be under the Witch King's sway, because they're actually in the adventures were controlled and created by Blogath, another one of these blood whites, which is the queen of them all, which helped facilitate the fall of the men of the North far back in histories before they thought all these blood whites were sealed away. But they weren't, because Angmar has come in. They've sent somebody called Elthkali the Easterling. He's a sorcerer. He's another great NPC. And he has raised or found the tombs of these blood whites and used scrolls and power from Angmar at Sauron to help him control them. And he's kind of manipulating behind the scenes. So he's a great person to have as well. And he has this troll with him called Olag, who is a snow troll, white, and a lot of this takes place in the winter at some point. So he's this big white troll, and he's a great NPC to have a threat to the characters as well. And then finally, last but not least, of just other cool monsters and stuff that you can put in. There are, within Hillman of the Trollshaws, the adventure, there are things called petty dwarf ghosts. I consider them more wraiths. They have long claws, they're thin, small, blazing red eyes, and they're shadows, and they can just take somebody's throat out almost instantly. And they're other really cool threats that you can get in. So you've got these two blood whites, you've got up to 10 petty dwarfs. They were supposed to be destroyed in the past as well, but again, I just rework that history and say that they're involved in this if you're going specifically by the book, because you want to use a few of them. I think I used 3 or 4 of them and say like the other 6 were destroyed, but they didn't know that there were 10. So you can have them as threats, and they're controlled as kind of puppeted out by other powerful human NPCs that I weave in that are evil throughout the entirety of the area. And then you also have Hillman tribes here, painted up, blue-faced or whatever, very Pictish. And they come in and raid or are dealing with these towns, and you've got to deal with them as well. So you've got orcs, Hillman, blood whites, the sorcerer sent from Angmar, Elthkali the Easterling. You've got, obviously there are trolls here as well, but the snow troll's a great one. And then you've got the petty dwarf ghosts, or wraiths as I call them. So that gives you a really good setting to pick and choose your battles within this area. And it still gives you a wide berth of area. You've got the Fellwood, which is a dark forest. If you want to do forest encounters, I know I've run into bears and stuff in there, obviously wargs, and layers of trolls, and I make tribes of orcs that have gotten in there, or goblins, and give them specific powers like their bow specialists or stuff like that. And then to the north of that, once you get out of the Fellwood and are heading toward Cameth Bryn, there's a great picture of Cameth Bryn I'll show you here. Yeah, Cameth Bryn, once you go towards there, that's more of a rocky area. I picture it kind of the New Zealand area in Lord of the Rings, where they're moving up through stones and a little bit of grass. And it's it's more open, and that's where you can get into the raiders from Angmar in these particular orcs and whatever's coming down. And then you've got the intrigues itself of the small community of Tanith Bryn, which I've thrown a lot of cool NPCs in there. I've made a guy called Belugaman, who is a guy from Tharbad who's been corrupted by the North, and he's trying to sway the Dunish mayor to open up the town to Angmar. And then you've got other sub-characters in there that are lesser Dunedain, some of them corrupted, some of them not. So you've got a lot of really great storylines within this area, and you can encompass it all in a couple of years of campaign, right between those two great books. And if you want to, once you've completed this campaign and dealt with these particular things, your characters are going to have enough power, enough magic, and enough experience to then go, okay, let's move them across the Misty Mountains if we want to, and get them into some of the intrigues that we saw in The Lord of the Rings or heard about in The Lord of the Rings, that although that particular, the Fellowship went south into Lorien and through the Gap of Rohan and all those particular areas, and then went to Mordor, there was a lot going on in the north where Sauron and Angmar were trying to deal with, the reclaimed mountain of the dwarves, and Dain and how he falls at the gates there, defending it versus the Mount Gundabad orcs that came to take it out. And Sauron obviously wanted the sway of Smaug, but didn't get it. He was thwarted there, so he had to go in just with armies. And then you see another great battle there, and you can use Thranduil and the elves and Mirkwood and the spiders. So you've got all that you can throw in after as a secondary sub-campaign if you wanted to. But this gives you a great ability to establish a campaign, establish yourself in the world, and get your characters going in some of the lore, and let them feel like they've really helped. Because if you free the Rhudaur, it makes everything more difficult for the events of evil during the events of the Lord of the Rings. And you could obviously keep them here as well, and do other campaigns south if you wanted to, or just keep them in the area. But it gives you those options. That's why I like setting it in that period. Again, 8 years after Bilbo's birthday when he left for Rivendell, and 8 years before The Lord of the Rings. That's a 16-year window. I keep it right in the middle there. So if you do happen to go south and get into Rivendell, Bilbo will be there. And you can have, one of the things that I'm doing in my campaign, we have somebody that keeps using shadow magic. That would be Sauron's magic. There are only like 3 or 4 spells of it, because really I think in the whole Savage Worlds edition, there are only like maybe 20 spells max. And some of those are evil. Well, this person keeps using them, and maybe they'll have to go to Rivendell to try to get that taint out of them because it's dropping their spirit. Nevertheless, great place to campaign. Very excited about doing it. I think my players really like it, and I think you would really like it. And those are the supplements I would look for. Like I said, the Trove, you can find at least the core books on this. Probably Rangers of the North and Angmar are going to be there, and I think Hillman of the Trollshaw is the only one you might not find is Dark Mage. So if you might be able to buy it, I don't know. But again, these books are salty on their price if you want a physical copy. But nevertheless, that is my Rhudaur campaign. I hope you enjoy it. And otherwise, hit me up with comments if you have anything to say or have any questions. I can look into my books or tell you how we've played things out. But a great campaigning area. And otherwise, for you guys, great gaming as always.